Hey everyone, so today's video is on the 7 top enemies of an embalmer and somebody who works in a care center getting a deceased ready for viewing. So we're not talking maggots or accidents that need advanced restoration or things of that nature. We're talking just common everyday things that are going to affect every individual for viewing that we are combating. So the first of those is gravity. We are battling gravity constantly because when you're upright, everything is in one position. You're used to seeing your mom's face with the skin in one way, her earrings hanging one way, her necklace sitting one way, her hair maybe forward and in a certain way. However, when an individual's laying backwards, your earrings are going to hang back, your hair is going to tend to fall back. Even your skin on your cheeks is going to try to droop back. So if you have jowls, those are going to end up back here. All the things about a face and a body that look to us in a normal way because we've always seen the person upright and face to face. Now, as they're laying down, is going to be very different visually because of gravity. So we are constantly battling that with maybe secret pins, holding a necklace to the shirt, or making sure we have earrings that don't just fall to the side, a whole lot of hairspray to hold the hair in place, and constantly manipulating the face as we're embalming to try and bring it forward as much as we can. So we do have some tricks up our sleeves with those little things, but it's a constant battle with gravity. So the number 2 thing is going to be lighting. We are always trying to get the best lighting so that your loved one is shown in the best possible way. Now, a lot of prep rooms, embalming rooms are going to have either really bad old yellowish lights in them, and some of them may have, like this room, super bright lights in it. I would prefer that I work in a room with really bright lights, because then when you move an individual into your chapel that you have cosmetic lighting, which is like the pink bulbs or the softer lighted bulbs, they are going to be much more forgiving of any misperfections of the individual, maybe a droopy lip from having a tube in their mouth for weeks at the hospital, or a bruise on their nose that we've had to cosmetize from their fall right at the end of life. So there's a lot of things that those lights will be very forgiving of after we've had to use a lot of cosmetics. However, we can't always control the lighting. If we go to a church or another facility, we need to make sure that we have done our absolute best with how that individual looks, so that way if we get into a lighting situation where we don't control, we're still getting the optimum results of viewing of that individual. So lighting is number 2. So number 3, our biggest number 3 enemy is going to be tissue gas. So this is from a bacteria called Clostridium perfringens, and these start within the body and they spread super quickly. They're most prominent with somebody who had maybe an open wound or had bacteria introduced into their body in a medical setting, or through exposure to tissue gas from tools in the prep room. It's easily passed between deceased, which is why sanitation is super essential in a prep room. But tissue gas spreads really quickly. So we may have an individual that looks completely fine. You come back a couple hours later and they've blown up in areas and their tissue is all sorts of decomposed very rapidly because tissue gas works super fast. So this is a huge enemy of ours that we have to keep a lookout for, and we want to zap it in place where it is. So if we know there's tissue gas going on, we get right up into the brain, we get right into the tissue, we channel, we get it all the chemicals where we need them to stop that bacteria from moving forward into the body and then also from spreading to other deceased in our care by sanitizing all of our instruments following a preparation. So the number 4 enemy is moisture. Whether it's from edema, whether it's from leaving the individual on a wet table in a moist room. I know some of you hate that word, but those are breeding grounds for mold and bacteria and other things to come into play to attack that individual essentially. So we want to make sure the individual, after we do our preparation and bathing, is dry underneath, in all of the areas between the legs, like on the thighs and such, where skin may be touching. We want to make sure there's no moisture there. That's going to excel decomposition, the more moisture that is on the deceased. So that is one thing we're constantly fighting and making sure is gone when we're doing the preparation, is moisture. Now, along with moisture comes leaking. Leaking creates moisture that we're battling. So leaking from purge coming out of the mouth or the nose, anal, vaginal leakage, if there's been head trauma, leaking out of the ears, out of IV holes that were in the arms from the hospital. So we've got a lot of spots that could create leaking areas, and we have to make sure that we are preventing and putting barriers on the deceased from those areas leaking out. Sometimes that means cotton in orifices. Sometimes that means some type of a clear glue or a patch over an IV hole or an area. So we use a lot of different tools at our disposal to make sure we don't have leaking. The worst case is walking in for the morning of a service and the deceased having leaked over the interior of the casket, on their clothing, and sometimes that does happen. So we have to move quickly to get new clothing, clean the interior, get a new casket if that was the worst case scenario. But moisture and leakage kind of go hand in hand there for some reasons, and we battle both of them the whole time. The number 6 enemy is time. How much time from death till we get the individual in our care? How much time from the embalming until burial? How much time from embalming till viewing? How much time from the death until the ID viewing before the cremation takes place? The time frames are always critical in our planning and in our process and in what we do to make sure that deceased is in their best condition for you to have your viewing time with them before disposition. Whatever that disposition may be, if it's burial or cremation, if we embalm or don't embalm, we need to do everything we can during that time frame to make sure we have slowed down decomposition. We've tried to hold them in their viewability that they're in right after death, and we do our best to create that during that time frame. But time is against us always. So the quicker we're able to take action, the better. And the number 7 enemy of an embalmer is heat. Heat will accelerate decomposition like no other, except maybe a little tissue gas, but heat works against us greatly. If an individual, even if it's winter, the person may be in their bed with a heating blanket, a whole bunch of, covers over them, and they may have only died a few hours before, but it may have been like 2 days of decomposition because of how hot and encased that individual was. So heat really works against us when it comes to those first initial hours or a day or so of death. So we're constantly battling that as well. So those are our 7 top enemies of an embalmer that we encounter over those first few days, or sometimes week if we're looking at time frame, from death until viewing to disposition. Bye everyone.